years now, we have been enduring the media, Hollywood, and the deep state's continued cries about democracy and how a second Trump term would destroy it all. The truth is, they're the ones who have been denying Americans true democracy for decades, and I'm going to show you how. Rosie the Riveter here, dropping more truth bombs to destroy fake news and propaganda. Don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell to get new videos when they are uploaded. Now, let's get into today's riveting topic. By 2008, the formation of the Tea Party movement had already begun, and many voters were really starting to question the whole primary process. Despite a field of strong conservatives like Rudy Giuliani, Fred Thompson, Mike Huckabee, and Ron Paul, we ended up with the leading rhino of the party, John McCain, who sold out conservatives time and time again to pander to the Democrats during the Bush administration. By the time the primaries started, he was broke and behind in the polls. I remember being thankful he was getting ready to drop out of the race. Then he won New Hampshire, and practically overnight his campaign was flooded with money and endorsements, while the media rebooted their on-again, off-again love affair with him to get him the nomination. His only good decision was selecting Sarah Palin, which he later admitted he regretted, believing it opened the door for Donald Trump and MAGA. His first choice was Democrat Senator Joe Lieberman. You know, Al Gore's running mate in 2000. While I liked Lieberman, that tells you everything you need to know about John McCain. In the Democrat camp, the DNC was conducting their own shenanigans. Hillary entered the race as the presumptive nominee, especially in her own mind. She assumed the White House was hers. Then out of the blue, the relatively unknown junior senator from Illinois named Barack Obama jumped into the race. In the following months, the world watched as the Democratic Party politely told the potentially first female president to step back and let the young black man have his shot. Many believe a deal was struck that he would have his 8 years and then she would get hers. DEI in action when two protected classes face off, folks. As the general election proceeded, McCain actually took the lead in the polls, but lost it immediately when an early October surprise upended it all. The auto industry was collapsing. In a shocking move, McCain suspended his campaign to head back to Washington. This allowed Obama to take center stage in addressing the issue, which the media happily plastered all over the news, already setting him up in the country's eyes as the next president. It was nothing but a propaganda show, folks, and I have no doubt McCain was in on it. 2012 was nothing more than a repeat of 2008 as big money again propped up their candidate, Mitt Romney, even though the American voters were not excited about him. Trying to make the best of the turd sandwich we were given, Republican voters saw a gleam of hope during the first debate between Obama and Romney. I remember that debate and actually getting a little faith as Romney made an incredibly strong showing against Obama. Then the second debate happened. Romney looked like a scolded child who had been taken to the woodshed and was now overly cautious, trying not to offend the almighty Barack Obama. Like McCain, I'm betting that was all propaganda too. In the third debate, the left cheered as Obama mocked Romney for saying Russia was our greatest threat.
Governor Romney, I'm glad that you recognize that al-Qaeda is a threat, because a few months ago, when you were asked what's the biggest geopolitical threat facing America, you said Russia. Not al-Qaeda, you said Russia. In the 1980s are now calling to ask for their foreign policy back because, the Cold War's been over for 20 years.
Ironically, just 4 years later, Obama, Hillary, and the media would themselves demonize Russia as our greatest threat again, merchandising the now debunked Steele dossier, which was bought and paid for by Hillary Clinton and the DNC as the Russian threat to our democracy. Speaking of irony, I remember leading up to the VP debate in 2012, the media lauded Joe Biden as a seasoned, polished debater and politician. They boasted how wonderful and forceful Biden was at the debating. His aggressive, arrogant, and demeaning disposition during the debate against Republican VP nominee Paul Ryan received lavish praise from the media, with accolades for putting inexperienced little Ryan in his place. But remember, Orange Man bad. Since Ryan also turned out to be a deep state rhino, can you see now that all these politicians are working on the same team? And that team is working hand in hand against the American people. They are the antithesis of democracy. Which brings us to 2016. After George W., McCain, and Romney, conservative voters have finally had enough, especially after 8 years of Obama's blatant targeting of his opposition. So, when the deep state rhinos attempted to push a third Bush presidency with Jeb Bush, the people revolted. They were done with the Bushes, they were done with the establishment, and they were done with the politicians. It was a perfect storm for Donald Trump, and the deep state lost their minds knowing Trump could not be bought by big donors. However, before combating the Republicans, the DNC first needed to secure the nomination they promised Hillary 8 years earlier. Like Republican voters, Democrat voters were fighting against the establishment too, and socialist Bernie Sanders was becoming a massive threat to Hillary. He had to go. So, they rigged the primary and robbed the Democrat voters of their democracy again. In fact, they had an ace in the hole for just such circumstances. According to ThoughtCo, the party created superdelegates in 1984 as a way to prevent the future nominations of candidates considered by its elite members to be unelectable. Superdelegates are designed to act as a check on ideologically extreme or inexperienced candidates. They also give power to people who have a vested interest in party policies, elected leaders. These superdelegates, which account for roughly 16% of convention delegates, are made up largely of current and former Democratic politicians, and they are not pledged to vote for any specific candidate, such as the choice of the citizen voters at the convention. These superdelegate elitists overrode voter momentum to give Hillary the boost she needed to take the nomination from Sanders despite his strong early showing. Remember, this is coming from the party that claims to be the defenders of democracy. Don't cry for Sanders, though. He's been able to comfort himself in any one of his many multi-million-dollar properties, which one he purchased with a flood of money that came from the election. Not too bad for an avid socialist. The rich politicians keep getting richer, and we voting suckers are flat broke. Now, as I've said before, I was not a fan of Donald Trump's in 2016. In fact, I was a never-Trumper, partly due to the fact that the media did everything they could to prop him up in the primary, despite doing a 180 after he obtained the nomination. I didn't like the way he talked. I wasn't sure if I could trust him, and I was concerned he was just another rhino and fake conservative like all the rest. However, when the rhetoric only intensified following his election, actually calling for his impeachment before he was even inaugurated, I realized something was not right. So, I began doing my homework and following their actions. The deep state's relentless attacks, false investigations, false reporting, and now illegal and unconstitutional lawsuits and lawfare opened my eyes to it all. I now see what Trump is doing is exposing this whole corrupt system for what it is. A banana republic parading as democracy so as to bring forth a tyrannical government run by the elites. Folks, they never thought Hillary was going to lose. They can never, ever let him win again. Not convinced? Let's look at the 2020 election. Again, a plethora of nominees took the debate stage for the Democratic Party, with Joe Biden being one of the least liked candidates among them. Again, Bernie Sanders took an early strong lead, while Biden lost primary after primary. That is, until South Carolina. Biden's win there gave big donors permission to flood his coffers with cash and fresh endorsements, magically jump-starting his campaign as the DNC once again pushed Sanders out. Huh, that story sounds vaguely familiar. Shortly after the election, the DNC decided to make South Carolina their first primary state moving forward. Why? Why would you change such history and precedent? Because apparently, if the voters refuse to give you a legitimate Democratic win, you must cheat and rig the system to your advantage to force the victory you want. So, what about 2024? Knowing we have a manipulated primary cycle, Trump bypassed it by going straight to the people and letting them decide. Again, he didn't have the big money. They went to DeSantis initially and then Nikki Haley, which included major Democratic donors. Because democracy, right? To bring the will of the people, correct? Trump didn't have prominent rhinos behind him either. In fact, we have discovered the RNC, led by Romney's niece, Ronna McDaniel, had been working against him and MAGA candidates all along. States even tried to get Trump removed from the ballot, because if you can't beat him, eliminate him. Likewise, the DNC did everything they could to keep the Democratic candidates from running against Biden, even though the majority of their voters said they wanted someone other than old Joe. Just look at what they did to Robert Kennedy Jr. He's a Kennedy, a darling of the party. Then liberal shills like Whoopi Goldberg tout Biden's primary wins as if they really meant anything.
He kicked butt a couple of days ago.
South Carolina.
He did better than you know who did.
Yeah. The DNC kept other formidable candidates off the ballot. So who was he running against? Of course he's going to get 85 to 90% of the vote. Seriously, folks. How can you be okay with that and say you are for democracy? That is what third world nations do. That is what dictators do. That is what communists do. Like it or not, Trump's nomination was actually a true demonstration of democracy. The people chose him, despite what the RNC, the deep state elites, the media, and the big money donors tried to push. If liberal talking heads were truly and honestly for democracy, they would be calling out the DNC for not allowing a primary. Why aren't they ranting about this blatant disregard for democracy as the national parties try to tell the people who their candidate is, instead of letting the people choose? Because this, my friends, is the democracy they proclaim and are terrified Trump, the man who is actually supported by the people, will destroy. This so-called authoritarianism they parade as democracy, letting the people think they have a say when it is all manipulated from behind the scenes, is the system the media themselves participate in. It is the democracy that Trump is dismantling right before our very eyes. And the fun is not over yet, patriots. Do you think it's a coincidence DAs Braggs, James, Willis, and Smith waited until after Trump jumped into the race to indict him on 91 counts? Presuming his guilt, pundits try to convince voters they can't vote for somebody with 91 indictments, while insisting Biden and Hillary's classified documents cases were completely different. This is not only mis- and disinformation, it's election interference at its finest, folks, not democracy. Again, if you can't beat him, indict him. But Trump's not the only candidate they want to replace. Did you know the DNC has a rule that will allow their committee, a small group of unelected people, to replace their presidential candidate if the one nominated by the people has to withdraw after the DNC convention? meaning the DNC alone chooses the nominee regardless of who the people want. So, they prevented every possible challenger from running against Biden in spite of the voters' preference, while also having a plan to replace him themselves after the convention. Democracy, right? The RNC does have a similar rule. However, the DNC is already putting out indications they will likely use this rule this year, meaning they already have someone else they want as the candidate that is not who the voters would have chosen. Trump's trial in New York is moving forward, and the judge threatens the presidential candidate he will be thrown in jail if he speaks out or doesn't show up for his show trial. Anyone who is awake, even if you hate Trump, can see this is obviously an attempt to tie Trump up in court instead of allowing him on the campaign trail, while another court fined him the exact amount he had in liquid assets, bringing forth the possibility of bankruptcy. Coincidence? So I have to ask, how can you still contend Trump is the threat to democracy? For over 20 years, I have been humbly praying that God would clean up the corruption and restore our country. I remember in the spring of 2016 falling on my knees, sobbing and pleading with God to allow Ted Cruz to become the nominee and then president. What I didn't see at the time was cleaning this up is a dirty, filthy job. It's not called the swamp for nothing. The person who takes this on must be willing to get dirty and nasty himself. He's cleaning out a amount of excrement that has been building for over 150 years. As much as I love Ted Cruz, a clean-cut, nice, polite Christian guy like him could never be able to drain the swamp. This job requires someone who's not afraid to get in the ring and throw a few punches. To me, it is becoming painstakingly obvious why the media, Hollywood, and the deep state despise President Trump so much. He's exposing everything about them and showing the world what their ultimate agenda is. Unabashed, unopposed, and unrepentant control. They can't buy Trump, which means they can't control him. And that, my friends, terrifies them. So much so they are doing everything they can to bankrupt and imprison him and, frankly, anyone else who supports him, all while claiming they are preserving democracy. As Thomas Jefferson said, the tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants. The truth is, the deep state wants us at war with each other. They need that chaos, and they are happy we are killing each other. While people hate Trump, have they noticed that his weapon of choice is the pen, as it is without a doubt mightier than the sword? We are at war, patriots, and we are refreshing the tree of liberty, but with words, not weapons, and with memes, not machine guns. Therefore, it's time to ask yourself, do you really want our country to be free? Or would you rather be like the Israelites who wanted to return to slavery in Egypt because it was secure? Are you ready to accept the truth? Or are you comfortable believing the lies because it validates your confirmation bias? Are you truly a proponent of democracy? Or are you secretly okay letting others tell you who our leaders will be because you don't want to be bothered? The choice is yours, patriots.
You must choose, but choose wisely.
I'm Rosie the Riveter, and that's my 2 cents. But what do you think? Leave your comments down below. If you enjoy my content, please consider supporting my work on Patreon. You can find all my videos and my blog Liberating Letters at thefaxpaper.com. You can also start your own research on the Fax Paper by exploring the thousands of links to articles I have, including those noted in my videos, showing the truth fake news propagandists won't. Investigate and discover the truth for yourself.